Kevin Clements asked me some questions about my lifting, of kind of like my why this style of lifting, why I did what I did. And I'm going to break this up into a couple different parts because I've tried to make this video a couple times and it ends up being like a, 10, probably end up being a 20-minute story with a lot of details being cut out, but I figured it'd be easier just to break this up in different parts. So in this video, and the part of the question that I'll answer is kind of what got me into lifting and kind of like my introduction to it, and kind of like my pre-high school time of lifting. And then in subsequent videos talk about the lifting I did in high school and then in college, and then how I got into weightlifting specifically and kind of all of that. So I'll hopefully be able to answer all of the questions. I just want to keep the videos around 5 minutes just because that's usually how many clips I have with the lifting in each of my training sessions from what I'm finding. But my first introduction, so like my first thing I ever saw with lifting was with my dad. He was doing some dumbbell bench and I had to put the dumbbell in his hand to help him set up for it. And I remember thinking that the weights were pretty heavy and that, he was just repping it out. But we had some stuff in the basement, and I'm sure that I messed around with it at different times. But I wasn't doing anything serious back then. I was probably in, 4th or 5th grade. But in 5th grade, I broke my arm, and that's a whole nother story, which I can share. I've talked about it before, but I'll shelve that for another time. But in 5th grade, I broke my arm, and when I came back, I had some nerve damage in my finger, and... Sorry, someone on my fantasy team is questionable now. But I had some nerve damage in my pointer finger and middle finger, really all of my hand, but really those two fingers in particular. And just obviously weakness in the arm since I had broken my arm. And so my dad gave me some exercises to do to help develop those muscles back and get some of that feeling back in my fingers, I should say. There's tennis ball squeezes, wrist roller, nothing really that crazy, but just stuff that you would do at like a physical therapist office. And because I didn't go to physical therapy after I broke my arm, I just did what my dad said, and my arm got better slowly but surely. It took a couple of years for my two fingers to feel completely normal, and really, I'd say even now, like my pointer finger, like at the very top, feels slightly different on both sides, but it's very like, if I didn't know, if I had like forgotten that I broke my arm, I probably wouldn't notice. But like, because I know that that happened and I had so much healing time with those, I can kind of still notice it. Like at the very, if you like my very top of my pointer finger. But for a while, I had a lot of like numbness and coldness in the fingers and just strength issues in that hand. But started to do those, and then when I was like in 6th and 7th grade, my dad gave me some rotator cuff exercises to do, stuff like empty cans. Nothing that I'd really consider to be like hard training, but stuff to make my shoulders more durable for baseball. And that was kind of a general theme of my training. It was always to get better at sports, whether it be baseball and basketball. But in middle school, I didn't really train much. I was starting to dabble in it more. But I wasn't really doing anything that strenuous or consistent, simply because of the fact that I was doing baseball and then basketball, and so I was basically playing a sport year-round, and I just kind of dabbled at that point. But in high school, I started to do a little bit more, but I'll kind of stop this video there. So in the next video, I'll talk about the lifting I did in high school, because that's when things started to kind of turn up in a more direct, not really direct, that's not really a good word, but it started to increase in what I was doing and the progress that I was making in high school. And kind of probably around that time is when my dad tried to teach me how to do a clean. He only tried to teach me once, and I wasn't very receptive to it or understanding of what the movement was supposed to entail, nor do I think he was very good at teaching it. But I didn't do any sort of weightlifting in high school at all. That was the only sort of thing that he tried, and that might have even been when I was in middle school. I don't remember exactly when that was. I just remember it was one time, and it wasn't anything after that. But middle school, very little, like I said, and before then it was to recover from breaking my arm and get my shoulders to be durable, probably some push-ups and sit-ups and stuff like that as well. Nothing really too crazy, but very much focused on anything that I did was how can I get better at baseball in particular. Basketball, I didn't really do strength work as to focus on that, because it was more of like, you just shoot to get better at basketball. Or at least that was my mindset back then. But that's it for this video. So like I said, next one I'll talk about more of the high school stuff, and maybe depending on the length of it, start touching on some of the stuff in college as well. But that's it for this one. Talk to you on the next one.